Palestinians, by Syria. Like, it's Arabs. Iran is not Arab.
Now it's non-state actors, pretty much, right? Like, these aren't, like, you know what I mean, right? Like, this isn't the government of, these are just, like,
Hamas is the government. Hamas is the government of Gaza. Hezbollah is part of the part of the government in Lebanon. The Houthis control half of Yemen, and Iran is the fucking government. So it is the government.
Okay, we're talking about Arab countries in the region, but whatever. Okay, let's just say it's the Arabs versus, it's all just the Arabs versus the Israelis all the time. But in this conflict from 1948 to today, there's been ups and downs in terms of how they're going to deal with their hostilities. And initially it was, we're going to go to war, and we're going to go to war again, and we're going to go to war again. Now we're going to be a little more pragmatic. And I think pragmatism is starting to gain traction in terms of, how to deal with these hostilities with one another. With the Arabs and Israelis, especially on the Arab side, to be honest. I've seen them become way more pragmatic, and I think that's the future of the region. Like, even in Syria, right? This guy who was a terrorist, like, a few years ago, now he's the president of Syria. And listen, Israel has had a terrorist prime minister too. Yoav Shamir, right? He was in Lehi. That was a terrorist.
It's not Shamir now.
Yeah, it is Shamir. Dude, he was one of the main leaders in the Lehi. How was he not a terrorist?
It was because terrorism is targeting civilians in order to promote.
What do you think the Lehi did, dude?
Okay.
What did they do?
Why Lehi established?
Wait. I'm not getting into why.
Why Lehi established?
Listen. I'm not getting into why. I don't care.
No, it's a very important question. It is a very important question. After the pogroms from the Arabs, every time Jewish people must establish a self-defense group, not resistance, self-defense group from this type of pogroms. The primary question here is how violence Palestine. Could you tell me?
I got a question for you.
Firstly answer me, and then you will ask me.
What was your question?
Yeah, my question is how violence starts on this territory in Palestine. In which moment?
I'm sorry, I just need to go. I just want to say to Jack that, thank you for a novel conversation. I think maybe it's one of the first time that we had, and it seems that when we have a novel conversation without propaganda, it seems that we can agree more than we disagree. So, I know, and I will try to come back.
But
I appreciate you gave me a chance to talk. It was a good conversation.
Yeah, but Daniel, you must understand that he used a takia, and he
wanted
Israel.
No, I think he was honest.
To be on the map.
Yeah, that is fine. He can have his opinion, but it was not manipulating facts. People can have their own opinion and positions. The problem is when you manipulate the facts and reality in order to support your position. With that, I have a problem.
Look at what
Thank you. I will try to come back soon.
Look at what Igal wrote in the chat. He says he thinks there's a current fascist in the Israeli government. Can't identify, but he thinks there's a fascist and Netanyahu is the puppet. The point is, every government is a fascist government, and we're all just ants and bees serving our governments. But it's when people pick up guns and rifles and ammunition and go to concerts and kill and take innocent victims hostage, that's when all shit breaks loose, and that's when repercussions and justice will have to be metered out. You don't win a prize for doing that. You don't get a state for doing that. That's not a political move. That's murder and breaking the law and terrorism. It's the most wicked thing you can do in your life. It's horrible. And look at the repercussions, Jack. You think it was a good strategic move? You think it was intelligent to do that?
Has anything I said today led you to believe that I would agree with that?
Yeah.
I mean, what are you listening to, comedian? I don't know if you're trolling or what, but God,
Mostly, yeah.
I don't think I'm trolling.
Okay, Jack, but
like, I can't tell anymore.
Sounds like a problem with your head, dude. Jack, when violence starts in this territory?
During which era? The Israel, Zionism, Palestine era? violence in this land? I mean, which time are you talking about?
First violence between Arabs and Jewish people, how it starts and when?
Who initiated it? How long ago are you talking? Because we can take this back 1,000 years or 100.
Listen to me closely. The first violence between Arabs and Jews. That's it. That's the question.
The first violence between Arabs and Jews.
Who started?
I don't have that off the top of my head. I'll have to look it up. But
Really?
I'll look it up right now. Give me a second.
Okay, it was a Nazi collaborator, Amin al-Hussein.
There wasn't a Khaybar.
The Khaybar, it was a Muhammad.
Okay, that's an Arab. See, I'm trying to get a specific. I was asking you to find out what you're talking about.
I said specifically in Palestine. You must listen to me closely.
Okay,
I said
so go ahead.
specifically in Palestine. How it starts and who it starts.
That's like bait.
That's I don't think you can bring. I'll be honest. I've looked into this question a lot. There's
But why
no
do you blame Israeli self-defense groups? Because of
Oh, because I'm not
self-defense from Arabs every time.
Let me tell you. It's not the self-defense that I have an issue with. It's not the fact that we had some Jews get attacked in Jerusalem or in Safed, and now we need a defense force. That's logical. That you can understand that. The issue is the means and targets that they attacked. That's the issue. It's not the fact that they existed. That what made them a terrorist group. Why wasn't I think Haganah or Irgun wasn't a terrorist group, but there was Lehi was, and it's because they would attack civilians. They would assassinate. Wait. They would assassinate politicians, ambassadors.
Oh yeah.
They would. Yeah, but that's the definition of terrorism. You gotta understand it. It's not me calling it. This is the United States.
Technically yes. Technically yes. Yes.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay. But you must understand if you support some what you name like resistance groups or resistance from occupation or something like that, you must understand that most Israelis after October 7th think like you, yeah. And if you don't want people to be displaced from this territory, you should think about it, because most of people that hear your rhetoric or understand what you're gonna do or what you imagine on this territory, and that you are not recognized and don't believe that Israel should exist, you must understand that there is a lot of Jewish people who think like you after October 7th, because you are a big threat.
Yeah, even before October 7th.
Yeah,
a lot of people
and I
have
must be fair with you, okay? I must be fair with you, because if Jewish people today understand what's the threat, that the threat is very, very close to your borders, you will talk, okay? And sometimes war is not safe. And maybe the methods you will not like. Just be prepared.
Of course. I mean, listen, the Israeli military is the regional superpower, right? I'm not an idiot, right? Like, I know what Palestinians are up against in terms of if you want to take this to a war.
Wait, you're not an idiot?
Right? Like, that's not a hard concept to grasp. But, yeah, all I was saying with the original point was that you guys had a prime minister who was once considered a terrorist. And things are changing like that.
Sort
in the
of
Middle
calls.
East, so,
The founders of America were also terrorists, and they became a government in an army, right? So like,
That's
Sort of
right,
calls.
it changes. We're one of the disadvantages
Sort
of
of.
like living in the 21st century is things are so fast. It's a great disadvantage, right? We don't have that right? What are people going to say in 100 years or 200 years, right? So the fact that somebody might have started their career as a terrorist and didn't end it as one is not proof positive of anything, right? Because Arafat was trying to stop being a terrorist too, right? Because all the people involved were trying at a certain point. We're trying to move forward, right? exactly. I mean, like that's a good word to use, legit, right? So we can't delegitimize it going backwards once the system has already kind of changed moving forward, right? Now you're already in a new system. You could. I don't think that's like a very honest move, but you could.
Yeah, and by the way, when I say do I want Israel to exist? That's not my number one preference. Do I care if it exists? No, I don't care. It can exist 10 times.
I mean, Caleb, how can you say the founding fathers were terrorists and not liberators, though?
No, stop. Right, so because we can use words accurately without having them to be loaded, right? Like we can use accurate terminology.
I'm just saying, when you read about the lives of the people who signed the Constitution, they don't sound like terrorists to me. They sound like godly people and good people who fought for liberty and justice and against tyranny. So I just find it kind of personally offensive when you say they were terrorists. I know you're trying to make the point prospectively. I get it.
Okay, so thanks for getting my point and undermining it.
Do you think blowing up a hotel with people in it is not a terrorist act? Like, you can commit terrorist acts.
But to your point, Jack, to your point about what you just said. Nobody's trying to turn Palestinians into Zionists. Minimally, we're trying to get you to the point where you don't care if we're there or not. Literally. And, right? Like that would be just fine, and we would take that if Palestine was prepared to be an apathetic. We prefer an apathetic neighbor, right? That would be great.
This is the thing, though. You say that, but then wait. I would love that, and I can do that if you stop coming to the little territory we have left and building more settlements and moving hundreds of thousands of people to live. Like, you guys always say, like, leave us alone. I want to, but you keep moving right next to me. You know what I mean? It's like,
so Jack, for 40 years or more, right? Anybody who's still holding on to the two-state solution is holding on to basically the exact same frameworks, which have to do with stopping settlements, withdrawal from large settlement blocks, 1967 borders, some territory swaps, these kinds of things. These, as far as I understand, in the world that is still talking about any legitimate two-state solution, that is still the conversation, right? So,
is it realistic anymore? Because I would say whatever solves this shit permanently. But
it is not realistic today, and it is not realistic tomorrow. But that's because everybody has bad governance, right? When everybody has better governance, then you can have something serious. It's like a simple thing, but I think that's true.
If they were just two functional governments that could speak to each other civilly, it would be child's play.
Yeah, it would be easy to do.
That's what I was saying earlier, there needs to be a third party to force a solution, and I'm not talking about forcing with a gun, but, the United States, or as someone who's a world power comes in and says, I want to guarantee security for both of you. I want you both to, shut the fuck. The world wants to move on from this, and everyone else does on both sides.
Yeah.
So there needs to be, I don't think Israelis and Palestinians can solve this on their own because, like we said, bad governance, no one can talk to each other and be reasonable, so someone else should just fucking come and force it.
Yeah, that's what they were trying to do.
That'd be nice.
But that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen either. But yeah, I mean...
Maybe to Libya.
No, that's not...
You know what Gaddafi said? Gaddafi said to the PLO?
What?
You want Jerusalem so bad, I'll build you a Jerusalem here in Libya.
Good, finally, go do that.
But it was a joke, but it was like...
But how are you going to trust that guy? He lived in a tent.
Dude, the guy is one of the worst things that happened to Palestinians anyways, but...
Listen, it's... I'm gonna shut down the room. It's been actually quite very good room for the last number of hours, but I have to go, and I don't trust to leave it in the house in the hands of respectfully. But please, seriously, let's never go to Amir's room ever again. I know it's entertaining.
I'm
toxic and not
Yeah,
serious.
it's toxic.
And we had a very serious, good conversation here.
But I reject your claim that you can't trust me, Caleb. I don't go to concerts, kidnap people, and murder people. That's just me. I like to go to concerts and enjoy music like you do. I like to listen to the Grateful Dead. I like Fish.
Yeah.
Even though no girls go to Fish,
Awesome.
I still like
Nargis, You
Fish.
showed up too late, Nargis.
Did you though?
Showed up too late. I'm closing it down, but we'll do it again. Okay? This was Daniel's room actually. So, because I gotta go, so I.
Ooh, you know what? I'm gonna keep it going.
First.
Guess what, Caleb? I just committed a what's it called? A coup d'état. I just coup d'état the room.
Terrorist act.
Whoa! Wow, my first official act as a clubhouse pirate. I'm not gonna shut down the room. We're gonna keep this room open for 24 hours. And we're gonna call it the 24-hour Ultimate Israel-Palestine Debate Room! It's in my head, right, Mixed-Ed? Right? I know you like to say the word right all the time. Right? 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 Right. 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 Here we go. Right. Okay, that's what we'll call the room, actually. Right. I don't trust comedian, huh? Well, maybe you were right. Maybe you were right, Caleb, but you didn't pull the trigger fast enough. Don't delay pulling that trigger, Caleb, because, your enemy will get the upper hand at you.
Jindip is another terrorist.
Ooh, Jindib? Yeah, we can tell by the keffiyeh. And that great hairline.
Terrorist.
Any man with that much hair clearly has to be fake.
To put me a terrorist. Whoever put me a terrorist,
You're a terrorist.
your mother is a terrorist for bringing you to this
You're
world.
Ooh, I know this one. Hi, Jindib. How are you today? Living your best life?
I think my mother's bad. Wait till you get
Yeah. How often?
Yeah, you guys think I'm crazy. Wait till you meet my
I kill
mom.
you. He said I kill you. Yeah.
Who said that, Jindib?
Find me first.
No. There was there was a multiplication with Ahmed the terrorist. There was the short film after 9/11. Yeah, and he said Allahu Akbar and I'll kill you. I don't know if you saw this.
So, Jindib, let's give you a shot. If we were to make you the king of the Middle East, what would you do to create a better balance and less violence?
Off with their heads.
If I was made the king of the Middle East, well, you make me and then I'll show you.
What was that?
Once I am the king of the Middle East, then we'll see.
Oh, I see. So you don't have any you can't use your imagination to come up with some type of creative solution?
No, I have no imagination now.
Oh, really? The war has crushed your imagination and all your dreams?
It has, yes, it has.
Oh.
Right. Well, welcome back to Right, everybody. This is the follow-up response room to the past 6 hours of Daniel motor-mouthing against Aziz, against Jack, against Mikhail, Cynic in the chat. It's been an exciting journey yet again here on Clown House of people showing us what they got.
Did you just call it Clown House? I like that. Pretty good.
All the terrorists was here. That's great.
Again, it's kind of like a public speaking contest. Some people get A's, some B's, some C's, some D's, some are F's.
Can I ask you a question? How do you think will Jindip love the new place in Libya?
I think he actually might, because you have to have air conditioning in Libya. And a lot of people in the modern world, like in Germany for example, they don't even use air conditioning. But it's very hot in those stuffy old apartments. So I think if they go to a did I just do a Freudian slip there? If they go to some type of holding facility with air conditioning, I think they're going to be very happy.
Yeah, we will feel right at home.
Alhamdulillah, you will be in Libya, brother. God save you.
Jindib, would you go fight in Gaza if you could right now?
Absolutely not.
Why?
Would you go fight? Would you go fight in Gaza right now if you're giving the chance?
But they are your brothers.
Yeah, I can fight Gaza.
Okay, go. I don't.
You scared?
You people are fucking idiots.
Okay, Jindin,
Bye.
if you had $1 million, if you won the lottery and you got $1 million, how much would you send to a Gaza relief agency?
Not a penny. And what's the million?
Wow! Not only are you a coward, you're cheap.
He's a good man.
Very
he doesn't
frugal.
wanna support evil genocidal cause. What's wrong with that?
No, I'm talking about food relief efforts for the Gazans to help feed
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, feeding genocidal people. It's dangerous.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you were saying the Jews were the genocidal people.
No. He doesn't want to support Palestine because he'd be only contributing to people supporting themselves to kill others. Like, as far as charitable donations, maybe just give the bum a sandwich and don't give money to the Palestinians.
Jindid, when a homeless person is begging on the street and they're screaming out, "Anybody got any change? I need some change." Are they talking metaphysically or literally?
A little both.
No, probably just they want change. They just want to change. Maybe they want the change of diapers or a change of clothes or a change of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's mostly diapers. Or bikers.
You know, maybe like a place to sleep at night. You know, like a little one-bedroom bath. You know, or a studio with a shared bathroom. Even. I mean, do you know what a single-room occupancy is, Jindid?
No, not really.
A single-room occupancy is a room with a closet and a bed and a desk, and then you share the bathroom with about 20, 30 other men in the morning prior to going to work. It's like a homeless shelter for poor people, basically.
Right.
It's more European, don't it?
Yeah, in Europe, that's more common.
So I'm just wondering, do you think they're going to build a bunch of SROs in Gaza, and do you think they'll be on Airbnb by maybe December of next year?
What do you mean, like the tent city they have?
That's an idea, though. Okay, I like your comedy show.
Like, how do all the titles...
I guess they can't complain.
You
What
know,
are we talking about?
we're talking about real estate law, because like all these estates, all these titles to the property, to the land, like it's all been burned up or they took it with them. Like, how is it all going to go down when the conflict, you know, ends and people are like, that was my fucking street corner over there.
We're talking about East Harlem or Gaza?
Talking about Gaza.
Harlem.
It's a joke.
East Harlem, okay. I'm sure East Harlem has a very prime real estate.
Actually, it's
I mean, yeah.
appreciating well.
New York.
I mean, it is Manhattan.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as someone who spent some time in GIS systems, geographic information systems, they have so many aerial photos that they can figure out like where the street corners were and where all the buildings were in each of the buildings, and they have to map it onto any property plans that they have. But
That's actually true, yeah. Actually, everything is documented and it's...
right, I'm saying, but you know, you can put stakes in the ground based on GPS coordinates of where the streets were and where the corners were, and then you can map it onto the documents. That's my point.
Yeah, it's not that hard to figure out.
It's going to take some time, don't get me wrong, it's not simple, but it can be done.
I'm just saying things will never go back to the way they were. Like, it will never go back to the way it was. People won't probably be made whole, and people will have lost everything in this conflict. Because guess what happens in war? You lose everything.
Yes.
Yeah, look at what happened to Berlin after World War II.
I was just thinking about that.
Right.
The people who owned it were not the people who lived in it after the war. Some of it.
Right. Now imagine if McZed just started saying left all the time instead of right.
I tell my wife when we're driving, say correct, because I say to her, should I make a left here? And she says right. And then I start to make a right turn, and she yells at me. I said, just say correct instead of right.
Or you could just use UPS or GPS, sorry.
No, but you know, sometimes you don't have GPS on. You know, we're driving around the neighborhood. She goes, no, make a left. Should I make a left? Right. You know. So we finally, after many years, got it down to correct.
I have found that, you know, people generally take like the most accessible streets, or the, you know, anyways, the point is, what I'm trying to say is, like, I have essentially found little routes around my area that save me so much time, but it's all through residential neighborhoods because there's so much construction that's staying off these main roads where there's huge backups. It's like, right?
No, that's what happens when you complain that America's infrastructure is degrading. Delays.
Here's a bridge down the street from my house. It's about to collapse, and trains go over it every single day. Not a care in the world. Concrete slabs are falling to the ground. It's just nobody gives a shit. I'm telling you, like, there's no. The city of Chicago is run by a clown. He could give two shits about the safety of the infrastructure. He could give two shits about the safety of the citizens on the trains where homeless criminals and drug addicts abuse and kill you. I mean, there's no concern at all for the taxpayers, the voters. It's all about social equity, social justice now.
What's your platform going to be when you run for Congress?
I'm attacking the other candidate hard on the debt and vaccines, as well as property taxes, income taxes in the state of Illinois. He doesn't fight for the citizens of his district. He simply is nothing but a big bill pusher for his lobbyists who have given him over $10 million.
Well, the Chicago mayor only has, what, a 7% approval rating, so it can't get any worse than that.
Wow.
No, he's not running for mayor.
I'm running for
Well,
Congress,
maybe you should run for mayor.
I will actually if I don't win Congress.
Right. I could be mayor.
Yeah! That's from Back to the Future, right?
Last night in New York, we didn't have a Democratic debate on the issues. We had a Democratic debate on Cuomo. They all attacked him. I think it actually worked to his advantage.
Wait, Cuomo's going to be the next mayor. Everyone knows that.
Pretty much, yeah.
This is dumb.
What?
It's just
But
dumb.
because Como is running in New York, not Chicago.
He is.
I'm voting
We're
for
trying to
David
pivot it,
Carreras.
briefly to New York quickly.
Yeah, we should. People don't usually talk about Chicago that much without realizing that it's not New York, so it's pretty standard.
Oh, it's like New York in many ways.
That piece of
That's-
shit that
that's
killed
kind of
those.
catch.
The piece of shit
You know,
that.
I used to think Chicago was a flyover state, and then actually had to spend
Chicago's
a year and a half there, and it is like really nice. So I enjoyed it.
It's not a state.
You know
And
the piece of shit
I
that
like the,
killed.
I like
I
the
meant
Windhut.
like I would never touch down in Chicago. Like I would just keep on going to LA. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I would only stop in Chicago for work. Otherwise, no, I wouldn't go there.
I don't blame you. But the food, honestly, here is pretty good, and I'm suffering a gout flare up right now to prove it.
Yeah, no, I want to explore Chicago. Sounds like one of the good cities.
Yeah, there's where my sailboat is at. The skyline is truly amazing, and you know, they used to call it the White City, and they used to call it the Republic of Chicago.
And they had that very big Trump Tower. It's a big monstrosity.
Yeah, they just made the building give over $6.5 million because of you know, they endangered the fish in the river that it's on.
Well,
These-
maybe they should stop making it green.
These lawyers really know how to shake you down. Let me tell you, it's a license to steal.
Of course, they're very good at it too. And they rob you legally, right?
What do you think Hamas's lawyers are, you know, what kind of communication do you think the lawyers at Hamas are sending, you know, to the
I
lawyers
don't-
over on the
I
other
don't
side of the battle zone?
They're issuing press releases for the United Nations.
Does Hamas have lawyers? I didn't know that.
Sure,
Yeah.
you don't think they're educated people? What did you think they were? Just like a bunch of, you know.
No, they're pretty educated. I'm not sure if they have lawyers.
UNRWA.
You never thought they had fucking lawyers in the Palestinian population? Are you that stupid?
No, I mean Hamas. Do they have lawyers?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't think it's a fucking fully, you know, functioning government? You think it's just a bunch of, like, you know, jihadists running around trying to, you know, control the food supply so they can manipulate the population, so they can try to achieve some type of political stalemate?
That's what I thought.
No, they got lawyers, Harvard-educated lawyers, Stanford-educated lawyers, Princeton, Yale, Brown, you name it, Jindib, they've got lawyers.
Oxford.
Oxford.
They've got Amal Clooney working for them.
Yeah, I mean, why don't they issue some type of, like, you know, incredible research paper about, you know, human psychology and, you know,
They do.
advances in, you know, creating peace here on Earth?
They issue papers. I just recently read a law review article that was published by Columbia, following news, that was, reframing the history of Palestine and trying to be pro-Palestinian.
No.
They have people. Like, first of all, the Jews are small. Remember that, 0.2%. They're like a billion deep in terms of, like, religious, ethnic people interested in this particular conflict. It's like, it would be insane for them to have no legal standing, no reporting infrastructure, no media, no languages, no means of communication, while the Jews with like 0.2% have like a global presence. It's impossible. Come on, man. What's that, lawyers? Everyone's got lawyers.
No, they don't.
Then how do they get funds from Qatar? Who's the one organizing it?
Netanyahu.
Hungary Qatar? Is that
Yes.
what Qatar does? Does
That's
Qatar,
the lawyer.
is their banker to deal with Hamas for them? Or do they rely on an attorney when
No,
they're
that's-
dealing with murderers?
Netanyahu must have been there.
Everyone has lawyers.
I think I need a lawyer.
Yes, you do.
Everyone needs good representation. So, Mixed, what do you think about Gaza, and what about the Uniform Code of Military Justice, or what is the Israeli Uniform Code of Military Justice with regards to, hostilities and taking actions and targeting and all those things? Like, is it thoroughly defined on what you can and can't do, to civilians?
Isn't the UCMJ International?
I think it adopts some things from the Versailles Treaty and all these other things, but I'm just saying that does Israel must have their own military, judicial system?
Yeah, no. They have their own rules of engagement, they're called. Like the personal rules you set up for when to engage in conflict, how to do so when you do. Israel has all that. But UCMJ is a level above that, right? That's international standards that the world will judge you by. So most, liberal democracies have standards that are better than the UCMJ standards. UCMJ standards are more for international, like the way Israeli soldiers, the IDF, treats Palestinians in the occupied territories. That would fall under UCMJ because that's not technically actual part of Israel under the IDF. They have to kind of straddle the fence because they have to maintain it like an occupying military, which they have been since '67. But they don't want to actually conquer it, which is illegal. Which is why they're stuck there officiating. They function as judges and kings because the West Bank and Gaza were abandoned by Jordan and Egypt in the '67 war.
Wait. So Israel still treats the West Bank as an occupied territory?
The West Bank is an occupied territory.
Well, how come they're still building homes on lands and stuff? And
You can do that in an occupied territory. There's nothing that stops you from occupation from building a house.
on someone else's land, it's an occupied territory, right?
Occupied territory means that a sovereign that has legitimacy in one territory is, for one reason or another, in someone else's land and keeping their army there. Israel's justification for occupying the West Bank is that when the West Bank and Gaza when they had the two-state model from 48, they literally say, you could shoot a bullet, and the bullet would fly across the land of Israel and go into the land of Palestine before it landed in Israel, because the land of it was, so narrow in some places. But their argument was that it was undefensible, and as a result, they occupied it because when the '67 war broke out, they needed to occupy it for military stability. And once they did, Jordan and Egypt withdrew, leaving the citizens there and leaving them no sovereignty, no system of organization. Israel negotiated and tried to give them back the West Bank and Gaza, but they never came to terms, which is why since '67, Israel has been occupying that territory to defend itself from Jordan and Egypt, and they've been stuck officiating the management of the place because the Palestinians haven't gotten around to developing their own, which Israel tries to encourage them to do, but they're really interested in resistance, so it's hard for them to grow and unite in a coalition to form a government. So they're stuck. It sucks. Like, everyone looks at it and goes like, oh, it's your fault, it's your fault. You're all idiots. It sucks for them.
When you say that Israel occupies territory, whose territory is it occupying?
They're occupying the regions that the Palestinians inhabit.
Can you occupy something that does not belong to any state?
Yes.
Really? Are you sure?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. If a state...
Because I just ChatGPT'd it, and it says no. It's what's called terra nullius. Basically, land belonging to no one, and it cannot be under international law. It cannot be considered an occupation legally. It's sort of an acquisition. I mean, the idea is that Israel basically is the only sovereign under international law that can annex. It's not really, well, maybe annex this territory, but or just establish it. Right,
but then they got to deal with the physical, which is why they haven't annexed.
Yeah, I agree with that part. Yeah, obviously, I mean, the issue is that, I mean, if we occupy that, then we have a lot more pain in the ass than we had before. But, I mean, legally, under the international law, it's not really anybody's land, right? I mean, except for Israel, because within the state itself, the territory in which it was established, and Israel was established in that territory when it declared independence, right?
Yeah, no, Israel has sites on that land. They want it. That doesn't change the fact that other people have a claim to it and have been occupied.
Oh, they can. But Israel is the only power in the world that can grant them this land if they want to.
No, that's not true.
It's associated from this land. They can do it.
That's not true. Israel's not the only power in the world that can grant them citizenship. I'd say the only real power in the world that can grant them sovereignty is themselves. They'd have to organize and prove it to whatever standard.
Not since the Declaration of Independence. You cannot declare sovereignty, in another state's territory.
Since what Declaration of Independence? America's?
Israel's, yeah.
Since Israel's Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
Why should Palestine care about Israel's Declaration of Independence?
Because it's Israel's territory. The euro, right? Not de facto. We would not control it.
About the Palestinian regulations when they declared independence?
Well, again, that's what I'm saying. If I remember correctly, it's called Pasidati Juris, right? That's what it's called. It's principle in international law. When they declare independence, the independence is within the borders of the territory that was there.
This is not the case of discovered land. We're not talking about America.
So if Palestinians declare independence,
discovered land. No.
Okay.
So if Palestinians declare independence, so what does that mean?
You're saying that the land is ownerless.
Saying, I mean, assume that it was ownerless, then it's not an occupation, but it's actually not ownerless.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's anything ownerless, especially not if people are there. That's like a weird thing in fiction. But the occupation is there. It's a justified military
Genocide is there, the colonialism is there. You can just throw words in the air and say it's there, right? But legally, under international law, it's not really. That's what I'm saying. This is the weird part.
So what happens? So what happens?
You have Egypt and you have Jordan, right?
Okay, so
that actually accept the borders of Israel. And so
what happens?
Those peace I'm going to be quick. So those peace treaties, they actually, under international law, they are the ones, the peace treaties with Jordan and Egypt, they're the ones that define the borders of Israel.
Right.
This is the only way that you can define the border, right? Because you have peace treaty with a country that accepts the border. Right?
It strengthens your border claim if the country next to you agrees with you.
That's how the international law works. You have to have an agreement, right, with another country, and then the border is established. Otherwise, you can just draw a line on the map and say this is the border, right?
So what happens when Palestinians declare independence? So what happens if Palestinians declare independence?
I mean, they can do whatever they want. I mean, it's Israel. If Israel does not accept it, it doesn't work.
Okay, the Palestinians don't accept Israel's declaration of independence, isn't it?
Well, nobody cares about them. It's
Well,
already established.
Right, but nobody would care
They
about
had
this.
their chance in '48. That was the
Nobody
idea.
cares about them.
That both states should have declared independence then. That we wouldn't have a problem, but they declared war instead of independence.
Alright,
Their independence.
keep living in Lululand. Goodbye, guys.
That's what the international law says.
What do you mean international law says you cannot declare independence in someone else's sovereign territory? Why not? Like, what are you gonna do?
What do you mean, why not?
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to
Texas says we're an independent
What
state.
are the legal consequences? What do you mean I can't do it?
You can say anything you want. It's not going to grant you this independence because, again, the land has to be like the conditions have to be there, right, for the independence to work. So, for example, if like the British had the ownership before with the mandate, right? And the independence was declared on the day when the mandate ended. Right? So the territory changed hands, basically, right? At this point. Right. So if the state of Texas tomorrow decides to declare its independence, it's not going to change anything because
No, that would change. Like, Texas's claim for independence would probably be effective. They have an old deal when they joined the Union. They can divide into 5 states if they want to. Might be 4.
Within themselves, maybe, but
Yes.
would they be independent from United States of America?
No. I mean, if they did the 5-state division thing, that would obviously still be states of America.
Right.
They would have federal recognition. All the states would immediately be joined, and they would have representatives. Because when Texas joined the Union, they hashed out a plan to be multiple states if they wanted, but they never did. They just stayed as Texas. But Texas is also like a fairly self-sufficient, independent state that has historically been its own state.
It is kind of a state. Yeah, I agree. That's the idea of what I said. America.
It's not kind of. It is a state.
It's kind of a
Federation.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, it is.
If we tried to start its own federation, though, then we would declare war. But that's what I'm saying. Like, they could still do it. I don't know what you mean when you say it's like illegal. There's just political consequences. Like, Texas could decide to join Mexico. And, like, what does America do to that? What does Mexico do to that? What does Cuba do to that? These are all genuinely good questions that have nothing to do with law.
Depends which law you're talking about. Again, international law is something that's governed by agreements, right? Agreements, principles, and there's just everything that I always forget. But again, I mean, if you say something that breaks the agreement, that does not honor the agreements, then it's not legally like it's not something that.
No international law agreement treaties are very legally binding because they're made between sovereigns that do not acknowledge each other as having authority over the other. As a result, there is no adjudicatory body to respond to any complaints one party has against the other.
That is correct. That is
Which
correct.
is why it is not a contract. Okay?
But I mean, it actually follows from those agreements that there are some definitions, right, of what for example, the state border is. How else would you define a state border?
What do you mean? How do you define a state border?
How do you define where the state has its border?
Well, you usually define things with words.
Yeah, but where? Where do you define it? In which document?
In which document do we see the confines of the borders? I don't know. Probably varies based on state.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Usually, it's the peace agreements or some kind of like agreements with other states that you have the border.
I wouldn't say usually. Sometimes. Like, there are agreements. Meaning, like, what's more pressing in the question of statecraft, like what is truly legal, is not the agreement between the states. It's the agreement within the state. The agreement within the state, where everyone agrees if you violate these terms, you deviate from these norms, you break these customs, there will be communal repercussions. That is the law.
But that's not international.
No.
If
I write to the Constitution of New York State, the borders of New York State include the Hudson River, right? And I do this, that, and the other. And someone else writes next
got a
door,
street
a
named after
different
him.
border, like Connecticut, this I think actually
He's
happened.
in a history.
And they wrote their own borders where they think that this belongs to them. Those are just warring states. They are at this
He's in
point
the
in a
history.
state of conflict, and they have no recourse to go to a judge who can stop them from war. If they can deal with it diplomatically and civilly, we applaud them. But there is nothing about the communication between those two states that define the border as much as the agreement within each state where they said the border was. The war is to compel the other state to change their mind
Bring it to a theological conclusion. The example that you brought, bring it to a logical conclusion. If you have a warring state between two countries and they cannot agree on a border, that means the border does not
What do you
exist.
mean a warring state within two countries? What does that mean?
Warring, like they're in war and conflict or whatever, right? Those say that this is our territory, like Ukraine and Russia, for example.
Okay,
They say it's ours, right? And we wrote it in our constitution. That's it, right? That's enough. In terms of their logic, that's enough. We wrote it in our constitution.
No,
We don't give a fuck what happens in
That's what I'm
Ukraine.
saying.
We wrote in our constitution that those territories are ours now.
So for the
That's not how it
information
should
I
work,
gave,
right?
Why do you say that's not how it should work?
Because it's just gonna bring another World War, like that's the way World War II happened.
World War II happened because people had
Because Hitler went and divided Poland, because he went and annexed the territory
No, that was
in
war of
Austria. Like,
sacrifice.
he just said that those are the new
That
borders.
wasn't him trying to like clean up the little borders on the edge of Germany and Austria.
But that was actually the precaution. That's the thing that led to actually and then he invaded Russia and then like the Soviet Union or whatever. So he just said, okay,
El Normo!
agreements.
Can you
and
come to
that's
this
how
room?
war break out. How else would war break out? That's how Hamas said.
It's called Migzad Podcast Law and Aza.
Wars break out because of the laws, as we discussed. The laws which are just decided internally. Standards of a region, which contradict or come into conflict with someone else's indigenous legal code. The areas of conflict where there is no court to answer the disagreements results in war.
Right, and usually prior to this war, there is an agreement between those two countries that this
No, again,
border,
not always.
we don't cross it like with our armies. We don't try to cross it like without going through the points with the where we show the passports or whatever, get visas and stuff like that, right? So there is an agreement usually before that, and then this agreement is breached.
No.
That's how the war starts.
No, the war doesn't start with an agreement. It starts with some kind of a conflict.
With breaching of an agreement.
No, not the breaching of an agreement.
Because prior to that, there is usually an agreement.
Because, like, what if a Russian just, like, shot up a community school and all of Ukraine decided we don't want any Russians in here anymore? Like, there's a million ways that wars start, and it's not based on, like, the terms of agreement. Like in America, with the...
Yeah, I mean
or the
invasion.
Boston
No,
Like,
not just any war. I mean invasion, okay? Invasive wars. The worst when our armies cross to another state's territory, right? That's usually when you don't honor the agreement that you made prior to that.
Always in honor of agreements. That's like I don't know why you're. Let me ask you this: If
The peace agreement,
If-
that's the peace agreement defines the border.
if all international wars and conflicts start from the breaking of an agreement, why did they start making agreements?
Prior to the war, why did they have agreements in the
Yep.
first
Why
place?
did they have an agreement?
In order to not have a war.
Why would
Let us say, okay,
the
this is us,
Pakistanis
this is you.
talk
Okay?
to the Afghanistan? Why would China talk to Vietnam or Japan? Why would Russia talk to Germany? Why would there be an agreement if there was never any kind of disagreement? A different way of seeing things, like a Russian way versus a German way of seeing things, because of those indigenous laws and cultures that see things differently. And then on border cases, like literal geographic border cases where you've got Russians living next to Germans, and the Russians see it one way and the Germans see it another, a conflict arises. And when cooler heads prevail, an agreement is reached. But because these are still two separate regions developing completely separate sovereignties, separate rules, separate customs, separate moralities and judgments about the world, the agreement doesn't prevent The agreement is a marker, a record of the end of a certain conflict of the past. The agreement
That's
doesn't
not what I
prevent
said. I
any
never said
conflict
the
of the
agreement
future.
should prevent the conflict. No, I said
It
the
doesn't.
agreement is
It doesn't. It doesn't. That's not what
It
an agreement
doesn't,
does.
no.
An agreement ends previous conflicts. That's it.
Yeah, and usually the agreement includes, and not usually, but in like 99% of the cases, the agreement includes the division between the two countries, and this very specific, like it usually even includes the pictures, and, that this is the river, this is the mountain, this is where we draw this line, this is where, and we sign underneath that.
I'm upset.
And if you look at those peace agreements with Egypt and Jordan, you would see those pictures, and you would see those.
Why do you think everything is centered around the borders?
Because that's the thing that happened, I think, in 19th century or something. We started creating countries, and countries started to have borders.
So
And that was like a very important
modern,
thing to
like
separate, as you said, the cultures and the internal laws and whatever happens within each country.
So then you agree that this would be abnormal, correct?
What, the agreement between two countries?
The past 100 years of the 200,000 years of human history.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have this notion before.
So
Yeah.
wars
We were
are
just
very
debating
rarely
right, and
about
people
the
were
borders.
colonizing or whatever, yeah. So we came to this idea because we saw that wars just break out because somebody wants to another territory and they don't give a fuck. And we said,
Very rarely think about the territory. I don't know why you think it's the territory. It's literally like a modern something that past 150 years maybe, mostly innovated by America that took over. Like America was a secessionist movement.
Yeah, America. I mean, let's put America to like aside for a second. But usually colonialism, what is it? It's like we don't give a fuck about your borders. We're just gonna come in and set our laws, right? You don't have like a notion of borders. When you're a colony, you just come in. That's it.
No, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. It's not the history of colonialism. They very often did coordinate with the locals because guess what? They died when they didn't talk to the locals. They did talk to the locals. They traded with the locals, which is again one of the benefits of capitalism and colonialism. They traded guns, which were fairly cheap from their perspective, but invaluable to the Native Americans' perspective for the sake of hunting and fighting each other. As a result, they traded with them, and they had furs, which were all the rage in England. The whole reason, not England, Europe, the whole reason the Astor family has a giant, massive stone library that they donated to the island of Manhattan is because they sold beaver skins. The fucking Europeans. Colonialism had borders. They made deals with each one of these locals. They traded with them. They spoke their languages. They intermarried with them. Some of the local Europeans would leave the European colonial areas and go live with the natives. It was not a war of conquest.
Before the formation of the states, which borders are you talking about?
Toilet.
The borders amongst the settlements, the colonies. The colonies established their borders. They knew where they lived. They lived close together. Do you really think they spread out?
Yeah,
went far away? Well, think about it. The natives know every inch of this land. Have been living here for centuries. But I know we'll send my wife and kids to live 10 acres away from the nearest stranger. Because that'll be safe. They'll be safe from the natives. With no deals with the natives. No deals with the natives. Nobody there setting up forts, setting up walls, setting up troops to run patrols.
Okay,
Just
you can have a
out
border
in the
around your
sticks.
town. Yeah, you can have a
It didn't
border around your town.
fucking
That's not
happen.
really a border.
They didn't go out there until the Civil War. That's when you had a whole bunch of trained soldiers, both the North and the South, and a bunch of land that could easily be grabbed to the west from the now militarily trained citizens and armed under the Second Amendment citizens of America. That's when West British
Then they came to this weird idea that each state should have its own borders, right? And they drew them on the map, sometimes with a pencil.
States don't start by having their own borders. Smart organizations and people develop their own borders so they can better trade and make agreements with their neighbors. Not everybody does it. England tried to impose it upon everyone as a solution and technically also a problem to some of the world's problems. But the point of border is to develop naturally because of what the indigenous people want. actual fact of our reality. We end borders because of where people end the borders.
Where is the border between Israel and Egypt?
Gaza? What do you mean?
The whole Gaza is the border?
I mean, it's disputed, but yeah, that's why all of Gaza is roughly the border.
Nothing is disputed. There is an agreement between Israel and Egypt. And there is
Yeah,
land there.
Egypt agrees to not control Gaza. And
Whatever they agree to. I'm asking about the border. Where is this line? Border is the line, right?
You tell me.
Where is the line?
Okay, so who the citizens that live within Gaza? What are they citizens of?
That's a very good question.
Are they citizens of a border?
No, they're not citizens of border. I'm asking something different. Like, do you know where the border is between Israel, this line between Israel and Egypt? What Egypt considers its border with Israel? It's Philadelphia. It's the Philadelphia corridor.
Okay, and therefore.
That's what Egypt considers to be its border with Israel.
And therefore,
whatever Gaza is, right? I don't know what it is. You tell me now.
I don't know
What is Gaza?
What is Gaza? Could you say it's a community of people?
No. I mean, in terms of like states or like who this territory belongs to.
Yeah, we'll get to states because all states.
That's territory has.
But let's start with baby steps. Would you agree that the people in Gaza are a community of people?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, would you say that they share a culture and language?
I guess, yeah.
Would you say they share a region and a way of living that they all must cooperate with each other to continue?
Sure.
And you would say that this is not a state. Why?
No, of course not.
Why not?
Because again, the state should have borders with other states.
Should have. Let's say it doesn't. Why is it not a state now?
Because nobody accepts the borders of the state.
Accepts. What if they accept it? What if they're like, yeah, we know exactly what we are. We're right here.
Okay. Put it in a document.
Or what if their borders are simple and they say that they control the entirety of Israel by their God-given right?
Put it in a document. Sign it with somebody.
Yeah, let's say they sign those.
Let somebody sign this document and say yes. We.
They do. What do you think the fucking Hamas charter is?
No, again, you can write any paper and then like throw it into a toilet. Somebody else has to agree to that.
Yeah.
It's not just what you say; it's what you agree with somebody else.
But what you seem to think is that for some reason, all of the Palestinians agreeing with each other as to who and what they are is insufficient for you until people who are not Palestinian agree with them. And that I don't understand because you're wrong. America didn't wait for the world to acknowledge they were America. They just declared it, and then they
were not Palestinians. Jordanians are Palestinians. So it doesn't really matter if they're Palestinians, if they speak Arabic, if they live in Quran. It doesn't matter here. Jordanians have their own state, have their own borders, right? They have borders with Israel, they have borders with Syria, and whatever, right? So they have agreements there that both sides, like whichever side you take, agree that this is the border of Jordan.
Okay, right? So you think that Jordan is
but
now...
Palestinians don't have any agreement with anybody about their border.
Are now null and void? Is Jordan also not a state? Is Israel not a state because Syria fell?
Israel actually has agreements. That's what I'm saying. Peace agreement.
No. You're saying Jordan had an agreement with Syria. Syria fell. Does Jordan lose its statehood?
No, it doesn't. There is a problem with the border, and I mean it should be established at some point.
But according to you,
actually, yes.
According to you, if the essence of a border is the agreement between states, the destruction of one of those states should naturally absolve the other of following through on that agreement. Correct?
Well, I mean,
who will object? Who will object when the other party is gone?
Mm-hmm.
Who has standing? Who has standing to say, hey, Jordan, you can't put the borders over here because they're over there? Jordan says, we made that deal with Syria. You ain't Syria anymore.
And this is exactly what's happening now with Syria, because Israel is moving, for example, some of its forces, as you know, are in Syria, right? And actually near Damascus, like 50 kilometers from Damascus.
They're moving. Prove your point.
And we have the Golan Heights, right? So
that doesn't prove
so
your point.
we eventually, yes, we do define the border, and we really hope to agree that let's
Correct.
get
You are defining the border. You don't give a shit what Syria or Jordan does. Israel is independently defining their own border, just like every state does, and they pull back when other states push. When the fact that Palestine or the Palestinians want to define their own geographic region and statehood and organization, however they do, it is irrelevant if the entire world disagrees with them. All that means is that the world is to some degree at war or disavowing the existence of Palestine. Doesn't mean they're not a state.
It does.
Why? I don't know what this massive state is, you think.
Because you cannot declare a state on the territory of another state. It just doesn't work. Like
Is it illegal? Are you going to take me to a state court and prosecute me? Do you even hear yourself?
No. I'm saying that it's not going to be accepted by that other state. I mean, unless it's a failed state and you don't care. But if it's not a failed state and it just exists, and you say, okay, now my territory, like I come to the United States and I say, this is my territory. I declare my state here. This Manhattan is my state now.
Yeah, right.
Is it going to work?
It could.
If I take firearms and I kill everybody who disagrees with me, it's still
How do you
going to
think we
work.
got up to 50 states? How do you think? We started with 13.
People agreeing with each other.
Nope, not always. Sometimes people just declare most of the state. Like the Dakota territories. They were territories for a long while. It was kind of an anarchy place where people were just running about.
But in the end, people had to come to an agreement. People had to sign documents about that. People had to draw something on the map that both sides would agree to. I don't know what we were arguing about. Anyway, comedian, I think you can close the room. Mike said was pissed.
No, this is the song that goes on forever. You were Migzed's dopamine fill for the day. Congratulations.
Yeah, I know. He can be very energetic. Yeah.
So you stand with Israel, huh?
That's, yeah.
Do you know who Meyer Tobiansky is?
No.
You should click the link above. He's the only person ever killed by the state of Israel outside of Eichmann, and he was a Jew. And he was wrongly executed with a lie, because the guy that killed him was a failure, and he put all the blame on this guy. He didn't have anything to do with it. He killed a patriot.
I think that might be the reason we stopped with the capital punishment, and we don't do it anymore.
But don't you think that's kind of fucked up that a terrorist will live in a prison, and he won't be executed for killing multiple people, and he'll be kept alive for a future prisoner swap? I mean, you don't think that is fucked up? Because, you know.
So you're like advocating for capital punishment. That's what you're saying.
It's so hard to advocate for capital punishment, but I think you have to advocate for it. Like, because when somebody commits a terrorist, heinous act, especially, like if it's political and, ruthless, I mean, if it's there's got to be situations where people deserve the death penalty. Like this guy Meyer Tobiansky, he didn't deserve it, but the point is he didn't get a fair trial. They called it a drum trial, and
right.
So if there's real evidence and this person is a vicious monster and they're unsafe to be in society, it's like, why should we as citizens have to go to work every day to put a roof over this guy's head so he can eat and take a shit and sleep, in a nice prison with air conditioning all day long? I don't know, it just seems to me like,
Yeah, because
Kill the
that's
killers.
the question. Like, if you start practicing this capital punishment thing, at some point you will get to unfair trial. You will get to a trial that makes a mistake. And I mean, it's just statistically like should happen, right? And then the question is, this person who like the judge who made this who made this case, and the person who actually pulled whatever the trigger or the rope or whatever, they're like the killers, right? They now should suffer another capital punishment, I guess. So that and that's the biggest problem with capital punishment. I understand the emotional thing that terrorists should be put to death. I understand it completely. And usually that's what the Israeli army tries to do on the battlefield, not to bring them to justice to a court, but actually eliminate them there. But I mean, if somehow it already happened that this terrible guy is in prison, I just don't think Israelis want, like, somebody has to pull the trigger, right? And somebody has to be the executioner, and that's like a terrible job. I know it sounds maybe like a bit, I don't know.
There will be no more starving.
But that's the kind of thinking that Israel has.
Yeah, but
We don't want to assign anyone to be in it.
But the thing is, you can automate a killing. The problem is, it's the lawyers and the judge who will now have to reap, you know, the blowback from that execution. So it's not really about the executioner's, you know, frame of mind.
It is also, yeah, it is also for Israelis, it's very important. I know that it maybe sounds like a bit weird, but it is very important that the person actually receives trauma, because his job is to kill people.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You don't need an actual executioner. You can just fully automate capital punishment now. You just put the person in a tube, flood it with nitrogen, and they're, you know.
Somebody has to press the button.
No, the person in the tube, it'll just be automated. You know, as soon as that door shuts, it just full automation, and that's it. You know, it'll be the prison guard essentially who walks them into the tube. But all I'm saying is, if everybody's broke and we're spending, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars on prisons, and there's lots of murderers and rapists and pedophiles and killers and robbers and people who are completely unhospitable to society, you know, I'm just saying, like, will we ever go the route for mass executions to save money?
Again, like even our tradition, like if we were saying, like, from a religious point of view, we had this thing with the boards, with the Sanhedrin, if you know what I'm talking about, like 70 sages, assigning punishments, like doing the cases, basically doing the judge's work. And the practice was that if this court executed a person, at least one person, within 70 years, this court was called the Bloody Court, the Bloody Sanhedrin. And so it's not even, you know, it's not even in the tradition. I know it sounds a bit weird, but again, that's the kind of a mindset that Israel has right now. It's really hard to change it. There are some people who are advocating for it, like you were saying, some far right like people, but it's not the majority. The majority are against it. Even understanding what you're saying, that why should we pay for them? Why should they, you know, just?
Well, the fucked up thing about a prison is it provides jobs. A prison provides jobs, so that's like the dual purpose of it. It's like all that money that goes towards the facility management. There's also people that work there, so it's like, I really do think that fiat currency is just like the biggest spam of all time, and that it's just inescapable. Like, you know, this, everybody's all upset about this new omnibus for $5 trillion in the U.S., and we're already $39 trillion in debt. It's just like, oh, it's more spam. But if we stop spamming, the whole thing just like stops. You know, there's no point to not just like creating more debt, because in the future you can just cancel the debt. You can come to a debt arbitration or some kind of debt forgiveness where it's like, oh well, we don't really owe 50 trillion anymore. It's actually only 29 trillion. It's all just made up because it comes out in the inflation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more complicated. I mean, at least the way I read about it, it's actually the state of affairs that was created after World War II because, yeah, U.S. currency is something that all of the countries in the world use as like the default currency. So the U.S. has to print those dollars, in order to stay this default currency, this default payment instrument for all the banks. And I mean, unless U.S. wants to withdraw from it and say, okay, fuck the dollar, we're just going to be independent. It's not going to be worth much outside of U.S. And it's going to, like, I'm not really sure how it's going to affect the economy. The economy is all built around it. So, yeah, I mean, Trump is trying to do something about it, but I don't think he's smart enough to do it. It's just the state of affairs that U.S. created for itself. Changing it would just cause a lot of damage. Alright, anyway, staying with Israel, I'm gonna go have a bit of a sleep. 3 a.m. here.
Only if you were a hot 25-year-old 6-foot blonde would wear a hot.
Peace.
how we win the
Oh my
Muslim
God,
brotherhood.
that voice. Hey Yakov, what was the code wording for the poll that Israel came favorable?
You went to.
Well, there was two polls. One
Went to
was the Pew Research, which said, please indicate whether you have favorable or unfavorable opinion of the following countries, and then just did them all in a list. So they never just say Israel, because then you bias the results. Gallup broke it out between very favorable, mostly favorable, mostly unfavorable, and very unfavorable.
Been good. Been good. Just.
And then 54% of Americans support a favorable view. So that's the combination of very favorable and mostly favorable. And 41% had an unfavorable view. So that was done within 3 weeks of the other one.
So you were saying that the first poll, it was 0 and 1.
Correct.
And the second poll was like...
it sort of said, well, you really like them, you kind of like them, you really kind of don't like them, or you really dislike them.
We're making the same mistake over and over again. We think we're dealing with reasonable people. They don't tell the truth. They don't want peace. They want us.
My audience is not her. My audience was you guys. Because she makes this pitch, she makes that point, she uses this poll, and then her whole argument is standing, or part of her argument is standing on it. And it's my job as a former pollster to say, this doesn't make any sense because you're not actually, you're not using the data as the data is,
By the time you respond to her with reason, she's already changed it. She'll go on to the next point.
Again, my audience isn't her, my audience is you, and I need to have a little bit more time.
Your audience isn't listening to her. She's just a raspy voiced crazy person who hates Jews and hates Israel. They disagree fundamentally with the existence of the Jewish state. Now, that's okay. You can disagree with France or Morocco or Algeria, whatever you want. But if you're going to try to destroy France,
Not Algeria.
what do you mean not Algeria?
They don't have a favorable view of Israel.
That's my point.
I got your point. I was joking.
You can disagree with a country's existence, but if you try to wipe it out, that makes you a criminal. And that's the position that they take. They're going to give all sorts of rationales for.
And she kept saying, "Oh, don't make this a religious thing, or we'll destroy you and you'll go to hell."
Hamas made it a religious thing.
It's not religious war. We keep saying that, not religious war.
No, it is from
We don't
one
want
side.
to make it a religious war.
They're the ones that make it religious.
Why do Muslims especially online, why do all the Muslims, for the most part, take one side? I mean, it's clearly...
Well, they don't even say it's not our name. They don't even say this isn't our religion. So,
The Muslim strategy of religious war is that this is the way how they can. This is how they can.
I think before the fundamental thing that you guys, Norm, especially you don't get it. It's about weak and powerful. Anybody who is weak, even in the Vietnam War, there was a lot of Americans which were aligning against with the Vietnamese. They were like going into churches with American soldiers, dead American soldiers were wearing and cursing them, go to hell.
What does this have to do with anything?
Because Palestinians are weak and Israel is strong. So Muslims are weak and Christians are strong. So Muslims take the side of Palestinians.
Wait, you think
like blacks take a side of Palestinians?
Wait, fine. You think an injured lion isn't dangerous? It takes real men to go into these apartment complexes to free hostages. They're not weak. They're armed to the teeth with rocket-propelled grenades, hand grenades, landmines, rockets. I mean, you're talking about tens of thousands of people that are armed to fight to the death. That is a powerful force to go up against.
I think he means to say the underdog. People like rooting for the underdog, but Israel's the underdog, my friend. You have an Arab world that's infinitely bigger than the Jewish world. One state surrounded by
prosperity and peace. And that means that also reputation of Islam. That's why we are recruiting 80% of the peaceful Muslim to fight Muslim brother. That is the fight. It's not about Gaza.
This is the part that you're wrong. When you have 1% of population holding 99.5% of the wealth in the world, you are losing. People are poor. People will side with poor and weak. People are not gonna, like for example, Americans are right now poor. They are struggling.
Americans are not poor, Wayfan. I think you're giving up
Look at the numbers.
Communism, we know the numbers. Communism is failure. It's not on the table anymore. You're arguing from, I guess, a CCP point of view, man. That thing is from 1950s. It's failed. It doesn't work. It's over. People want actual prosperity.
I don't think America's that poor, Wayfan.
That doesn't make you poor.
They just passed a $5 trillion bill. Do you know any other people that can just create $5 trillion out of thin air, Wayfan, and spend it? I don't.
Exactly. That's the cause. This $5 trillion is going to Elon Musk. It's not going to normal people.
No, it's not going to Elon. Elon and Trump had a falling out today, and Elon's not getting any money for Starlink and SpaceX.
Elon Musk kind of people. This $5 trillion is going to the pocket of very, very few percentage of people. That caused for majority of people feeling that they are getting poorer.
Wayfan, the world operates off of dollars, Wayfan. If the U.S. stops printing dollars, there'll be a global recession. And you got to understand, I think all this currency is just spam. It's literally just spam, and we've got $40 trillion in debt of spam, and we spent hundreds of trillions of this spam. But the point is, I mean, it's a civilization. It doesn't go out of business, and there can always be debt forgiveness, and and that's what's going to happen. I mean, you can't stop the march. You can't stop the flow. The spice must flow.
I am with you. It's a very difficult problem. It's a very, very complicated problem. What I'm saying is that this problem is the cause that people are siding with jihadis, these ideas that, hey, we will bring down capitalism. We will bring down powerful. This is how people go,
Well, he's right. Like, it's basically, it is, when it goes to a protest, when you go to a protest, even though a lot of the Muslim attendees might have, like, Nazi-adjacent beliefs, it's going to be promoting, more far-left ideologies.
Very complex, very difficult, doesn't mean we surrender. Okay? We are thinking the future of our children.
We surrender. Vietnam War was the exact
Vietnam War is when America in Vietnam led.
Kill a lot of people that surrender. Learn from history.
It's not a good example, because Vietnam is America in the middle of Vietnamese. We are now talking about jihadists in the middle of Western nation. It's a very bad example you are using, okay?
Israel is not a Western nation. Israel is in the Middle East, the same as Vietnam was in Asia.
It's a Western nation in the Middle East.
Outpost of Western civilization. It's the roots of the Western civilization. Check out your history.
No, Vietnam president was a Christian guy, the one that we were fighting on it. So it was a best civilization in Asia.
Yeah, Wayfan, just stick to 2025.
We were struggling against communism in Vietnam. Communism has failed. It's over. Here we're fighting against Islamism. The Western world does not want Islamism. The Western world is the enemy of Islamism. And as they've said, Israel is the tip of the spear for Western civilization in this struggle. That's what's happening here. We're fighting a terrorist here. Oh yes, I'm certain of it. And I think you're certain of it too, frankly, Pepe. Who else is fighting Islamism? Tell me, who?
Well, if you mean tip of the spear in terms of fighting, yeah, you guys are enemy number one. That's what you're implying.
Enemy of Islamism.
Yeah.
Well,
And America.
The best ally of West is Saudi Arabia.
Dave,
only reason that after First World War, United States get a voice in the war, because like Britain and France totally kicked the American out of oil field of Iraq, and Italy was part of it too. So the only reason that American exists is because of Saudi Arabia. And even Israel, I really don't agree that we're closer to mine. My love was dead, but now you're changing my mind. My heart is stereo. She put my name on yellow.
Throughout history,
Sorry, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Good. You can ask the flowers. I sit for hours. Let's start a business, but don't.
Hear that? That's the sound of sizzling. Pussy is the best place on earth. Every time I slip in, it feels way it'll work. This is make it a habit. 10 minutes every morning, all the way. She has a blessing. She broke my heart. She was like, oh my God.
Look, we talked about killing her before. I mean, this is...
Collaborated part of the Christian world, and it's that kind of game that it's a dance. Yes, they are not like friends, but they are like, for example, two different entities fighting for resources.
Yeah, but the problem with Muslims is that they're different from other people. There's what you see with them. There may be people who are like Christian. They're like, oh,
Tommy, and you ain't killing a car anytime. Hear me?
they're the only group of people that I can see that are foreigners that weren't even born in their country. Not only are they not going to assimilate, but they expect people to take on their culture and their culture. That you're not more like them.
Want to take a shot, Tommy? Take a shot. But make it your best, because I get up, I eat you.
You're not. That's why I said
I'll deal with it. Like, better know your wife. What do you think I'm going to worry?
That's why I said for the longest time, everybody can't watch it not. Like, check out. Europe is an abomination. I think it will lead to wars.
Hey, Tommy.
Like internal civil wars.
You watch yourself.
They're gonna have to reverse the situation that they're in, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Margarano, you are one of the most feared men in
What
Boston,
happens when the Muslims
and well known as the chief executioner for the Winter Hill Gang. Is that correct?
politically they start fighting
Yes.
for power?
You are also reputed to have murdered some 20 people. Would you say that is accurate?
Yeah, I've seen it.
That is accurate, yes.
British for the British. I don't.
Mr. Margarano, I want you to be as specific as possible in answering why the war between the Angelos and Winter Hill escalated.
Should not have
Territory.
I don't know.
Specifically South Boston.
A fund consultant or
Angelo want to control everything. Long shocking, venom machine, all the rackets. And there were consequences.
Yeah, as you noticed.
Yeah, there was consequences. guys like a suitcase? I seen him up on Winter Hill a few hours ago. Did you jump in it? You bet. You got a problem with it? We'll see who the faggot is. We'll stop the bullets, huh?
Let's say 40% of the population of these countries are Muslim. Both sides are going to find it intolerable to basically settle with the other, or come to a mutual agreement. There's going to be blood.
Hey, Jimmy, about the night at Triple O's, I was lined up. Forget about it. I was drunk. I was drunk. That ain't an excuse. It should never happen. No, it should never have happened. But that's the thing. That's you listen to me. Because you know the Jews will sneak up and bite you on the ass. You never know when. Absolutely. I worry about you. That's all. Keep on it. I promise. I promise. We good. God's invested you today of free. Why they kill Tommy? I think generals convinced that Tommy rather than Mickey than Judo.
China, well, this is exactly happening in China. China is showing the West. Look, this is how you deal with Muslim.
Wait, I agree with you. What Nazi were doing, this is what Hitler.
I'm okay with a lot of the things the Nazis did.
Oh, wow, oh my god.
Please leave room on the stage for someone that has spoken. So, I'm going to say this very, very briefly. I'm a friend of El Norm. I love El Normo, but I think he has a blind spot on this issue, and I'm going to be very brief here. Okay? If millions of Hindus wanted to move to Israel and then vote in bloc so that a Hindu would be the prime minister of Israel, and there were Hindu temples being built all over Israel, and Hinduism was taught in the schools, I personally believe that Norm would be against letting millions of Hindus moving to Israel, because Norm knows that Israel will die if Hindus move there. Israel will die, and Norm wants Israel to continue as a homeland for the Israelis for 1,000 years. However, I'm being very brief here. Please let me finish, Norm. Just let me finish. I'm about to land my plane. And I'm saying this as a friend. However, at the same time, if 1 billion Hindus want to move to Britain and replace British culture, Norm is happy with it. If 1 billion Hindus want to move to America, so I believe. Norm, I'm about to land my plane. I'm not attacking you. I love you. Just let me land my plane. I humbly state, as a loving friend of Norm, that Norm has a tremendous blind side. He cares about preserving Israel forever as a homeland. He doesn't care if Hinduism destroys Britain, America, and Canada. Okay, I'm done speaking.
No, because Canada and
Okay, no worries, but I'll just say Elvis and Elvis. Not sure I submitted my driver's license and they emailed me. Waiting for a response, probably identified as spam.
So they are already
So normal, I would say this. I think you recognize that Jews need to remain the majority of Israel. What makes it a country that has a Jewish spirit,
just the women
Hebrew, all this stuff, and the Jewish people. The Jewish people, you replace the Jews in Israel, it's no longer a Jewish country. I offer the same thing to the Thais, to the Dutch, to the Ghanaians, all of them. I think that it is always in their best interest to remain the overwhelming majority of their population, because these are their homeland. It's a little bit different in New World countries where we're more founded by immigrants. But when it comes to homeland, like Asia, Europe, and Africa,
Okay, no worries, we'll
they
just
should
see
absolutely
I'm sure
not
it's
allow
submitted my
themselves to
driver's
be replaced
license.
by immigrants. They are made up by their people.
Waiting for a response, probably identified as spam.
Just like China is not producing, right? China also has problems.
Now you are going to take us on overseas too.
Yeah, because to change all these things, if right.
So you are not blaming immigrants. The reason that your politicians are letting immigrants in because you are not making fucking babies.
Now we will be changed. Now they learn, they know the problem now, so they're going to change that, right?
Okay, so
One by
let's see.
one,
I was not sure. What's the name of the driver's license?
I agree with East Asians.
Spain.
East Asians, it took them much better, even though in China, Japan, and South Korea, their birth rates are completely crashed. They're still, they're taking some
They managed
immigrants,
to
but
make at
very
least one
few.
beautiful flower.
They're not willing to mass import people like Western countries do.
And
I think that is good.
Still managed.
What is good about the Japan economy has stagnated for 30 years? The rate of
Where are you from?
Even like waiting for a response.
I'm American.
Which country are you from originally?
Iran.
Iran. All right. Well, okay, so it's hard to compare with your country because nobody really immigrates there. But
yeah, no, you see, it's the Japan is better to
So I'm saying you cannot blame Indian or Muslims, like your own people for not making babies. Germans or French, why they're not making babies?
Look, it's better to have the economic stagnation than to have mass immigration to destroy the society.
You are not a politician. You are just like somebody who likes to talk about, oh, how great Christianity is. It's not how it works when you are in charge.
why is China and Japan doing it?
What's that?
Well, South Korea and China and Japan, yes, it's causing problems for them, but at the end of the day, they understand what culturally and ethnically committing suicide is. That
See,
is
Elvis, it's not sure. Some of the major listeners in the waiting for a response.
absolutely change your culture.
They have no other choice. What can they do?
But then they'll no longer be Japanese. They commit suicide.
Yeah. Either
Why
way,
do you? But that's cultural erasure. Why would you want to do that?
because if you don't do that, you will die anyway. If you do that,
True. It means that they go through a period of hard times, but doesn't mean that future generations won't improve.
If you let them be, right? If you let the jihadists be, not only you die, you get beheaded. That is even worse. Okay, that is a difference. We want to choose a life. We are not become beheaded.
Beheaded. Is Trump solving the problem, Pepe? No, he's not even. It's like this is all showmanship. Like he's not going to deport all the people that came in under Biden. The fact is what drives immigrants to come here is, first of all, there's a very low likelihood of deportation, and there's nearly 100% guarantee they'll be able to make a better living than they would back home. And there's a ton of people that are willing to exploit their cheap labor. So it's all of the drivers are set there in place. How do you stop that? You don't.
Elon Musk's robot is learning 100 skills a day.
Elon hates it. Prefers Kevin Man.
Will be replaced by robot.
I mean, Pepe, the way you do it is you limit immigration.
Oh, I know how it's done, but would the American public would they be willing to see nobody allowed in except for very few people and literal mass deportations like what we'd have seen in the 40s and 50s? I don't think so. I think that too much of the public is against that.
You mean from Europe or from America?
From America, like
we had mass deportations.
Oh yeah, like Operation Wetback. We had, and even when it came to the what do you call it, the nation of origins quota that we had, there was too many Italians and too many Eastern Europeans and Jews coming here for people's liking, so they put a cap on that shit too. I mean, they turn a whole fucking ship of people from those countries around. I mean, does the American public have the heart for it?
One way to address the labor problem is many young Americans understand the risks of AI, so they are all learning handcraft now. They learn how to repair the pipe, they learn how to be a carpenter. This AI resistant job, right? So they are doing that right now, and this will replace the dependency of cheap labor. So the era of cheap labor is over. We don't need that anymore.
You live in Taiwan, right?
Come in, yeah, it's especially come in to destroy and to weaken the America.
Well, you guys are like have a very ideal situation because despite your birth rates, you can always
Кеннер's will
since
never
it's
see
a
other
small
stuff.
country,
I'm
you
sure
can
it's
always
somebody
take the
might
cream of
have
the crop
size.
from countries like China and I guess second would be India. But you guys can always have a supply of people that are capable.
Dave, are you from Taiwan? Are you from Taiwan?
The whole thing is the country.
Dave, are you from Taiwan?
I thought it was from Singapore, maybe I'm wrong. Oh, it's Taiwan.
The country that has the highest birth rate, the country that has the highest birth rate to be same as the Muslim people are Israel. So we just have to figure out the formula.
Okay, but let me tell you why Taiwan is existing and China.
I thought it was from Singapore. I'm just mixing it up.
No, Jim, Japan in Taiwan, there are five there are not three. So there is an examination branch and there is a control branch. You are matrix.
No,
Listen, Israel is the first line of defense to the West. I think Israel knows it, and the United States knows it.
No, he brought up the birth rates. He said that I know. But I think that we can't be like Israel in terms of birth rates unless we have the same population. I would say there's only a few populations in America that fit that mold. If we were to look at like just primarily, maybe just look at the white demographics. See, it's pretty much that birth rates and hang everywhere. One of the exceptions where I used to live in Alaska, white people, I guess there's not a lot to do when you're stuck indoors for a large part of the year, so people have sex and stuff, but they have higher than replacement rate. The one big group, though, is the Mormons.
For the best show in culture.
And I do think that when you get like a Middle Eastern Jewish population, which is, I guess, historically known for having slightly higher birth rates, then you have the Orthodox Jews that
I'd love to see others know. I wasn't sure. I submitted my driver's
I mean,
license
you just
and
have like a
everything.
much higher level of
Getting the
religiosity in
response
this nation,
probably
which
as
is
spam.
correlated with higher birth rates. We are just, but we're not. Our population isn't that religious, so how do we do that?
I really enjoyed it.
Exactly, make it religious. That's exactly the solution that you have to get.
I can't make people
was allowed at 8.
You can. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
That's usually handed down by family.
No, governments can't like.
No, we're secular country.
Oh, they
I
should just
know,
do
but
that.
you can make people religious in a secular way. Like by starting not fighting
They should just do
religion
that.
or religion group like Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Now they have to come together. That's how you make.
No, until we can see like maybe decades, and I mean that's being gracious. Where Muslims play nice with all of the other religions and other people in their vicinity, and they're not hostile in the nations that they end up immigrating to. I guess we can think about it, but until then, that's this whole thing about Islamophobia and don't be bigoted. Well, if what you see has occurred for centuries all throughout the world on every continent with Muslims, you are literally playing fool's poker for the sake of not looking bigoted. Basically risking suicide by letting these people in. And so my answer is no, absolutely not. And I think it's perfectly reasonable.
Are we looking at the end of, and I think this is what you're saying, Scooby, before, we're looking at the end of the idea of liberal democracy. Is that what you're saying, Scooby?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I actually think that making a separate point, Norm. I'm making a point specifically about the United Kingdom and France. And I'm not trying to pick on you, Norm, but there are some on Clubhouse, there's some people that I would say, there's one country that I really